I started this week's readings off with factors affecting second language acquisition. The first thing I made note of was critical period hypothesis and how it's defined as a period of life where language can be more easily acquired. This actually relates to another class that I'm taking, which is early childhood education programs. And my readings for this week mention something about the window of opportunity, which is the ages pretty much between birth and ages 10 that children have to learn, which is where their brain is the most flexible. It also mentioned how, contrary to popular belief, adults' brains continue to be flexible throughout the years and the rest of their lives, but not as flexible as children in this time period, in this window of opportunity. So that's why I think that this critical period hypothesis is indeed critical and is indeed a window of opportunity that we should take advantage of, that our children should take advantage of, because of that elasticity that at that level at least is rare, and it eventually runs out. It mentions that young children are more likely to attain native-like proficiency in a second language than teenagers or adults, which also proves this not proves, but also goes towards this hypothesis. Adults, another mention that this reading made was that adults don't want to give their language identity, so that attributes to that critical period hypothesis, because young children, do not have that sense of native language identity or that sense of nationality necessarily as adults do, because they've lived years identifying themselves as A, B, and C, whereas children have this less complicated worldview, and I would say that they also have this more unified worldview where they probably not even identify per se, but they see themselves like everyone else. They see similarities. I think adults emphasize differences. Another mention in this reading was the importance of aptitude and that natural ability, and how it is key for second language, that easiness in which they're able to learn in a natural way. It also mentions multiple intelligences, and I personally believe in multiple intelligences. I know, for example, one intelligence that I do not possess is that of logical mathematical intelligence, at least not growing up. I haven't tried my hand at math again, because as soon as I finished it for college a few years ago, I did not ever turn back. But that is something that did not come easily to me. However, in my VPK class, I had a student who was really good at math, but he was not good at reading and writing. And I think it has to do also with the fact that English was his second language. Math, at least in his culture, which was an Indian culture, numbers are numbers, but words were completely different. So he struggled a lot in that department. The multiple intelligences, the 7 multiple intelligences, are linguistic, logical, mathematical, spatial, musical, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, and interpersonal. I've also learned, me being someone who is deeply musically inclined, I learned musicality being an intelligence because it was something that came natural to me. I just thought it was something that was equally as natural for everyone. But it is indeed an intelligence. It requires intelligence that some people just don't have, just like I don't have that intelligence for math, that aptitude for math. It also mentions motivation as a strong predictor of success in in second language learning. And culture. Second language learning involves culture. That's something that I did not think about prior to this course, but it makes a lot of sense. They have to involve themselves in that culture. It also says that that it should be a second identity and a second language ego. It also mentioned Myers-Briggs and the different types of personalities, and it just made me think that perhaps extroverts may learn more easily second languages, because not only are they less embarrassed of making a mistake when they're learning a second language, but they're probably more likely to engage in conversations with others that speak those languages, and that is a huge part of learning the language, is practicing it. And I know personally that sometimes I shy away from certain conversations because I don't feel like I can fully express myself in that other language. Then it also talks about the assortment of learning styles. I'm sorry, now I'm referring to the second PDF, which is the assortment of learning styles, and it talked about VAK, visual learning, auditory learning, and kinesthetic learning. Visual learning can be through graphs, maps, or pictures, and then auditory can be through lectures. Kinesthetic can be through experiments, case studies, things of that nature. Then, as reading Juan's journal, I just made a note about how he took the time to note his shortcomings in his assessment with the girls, with Elsa and Aurora. He made a corrective note of how to improve by mentioning that perhaps an hour was too long for them, for it being a weekend. They had a shorter attention span, and also recognizing that he was emotionally close to the girls, therefore they didn't see him or necessarily take him seriously as a teacher, but more so as a family friend. In reference to Tabor's readings and chapter 4, speaking a second language, I made note about the telegraphic speech, which is few content words as entire utterances, and then formulaic speech, which is unanalyzed chunks or formulaic phrases in which situations in which others have been observed to use them. I took note of the cumulative process, which includes number 1 as home language use, number 2 as the nonverbal period, which, as we have learned before, involves the time where children recognize that the language that they use at home is not used outside of the home, and so therefore they can't communicate. And then telegraphic and formulaic use, as I just mentioned, and then productive use, finally being able to implement it. Thank you.